Hi, everybody. We're going to get started in just another couple seconds. We're going to allow people to enter the webinar room. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're attending from. Thank you for being here today. All right, just another 30 seconds. Allow for people to get their login. We should have music at this point. I don't sing, so Rob, I'll leave that to you.
You won't see me on American Idol, so you don't want to hear me sing.
All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome, everybody, to Let's Learn Executive Protection, Private Executive and Corporate Protective Operations. Thank you for being with us today. And then I have a couple people helping us out on the webinar. My colleague Tanya and Missy are on. Thank you, Tanya, for running the slides today. A little bit of housekeeping before we get into our discussion. My name is Lindsay Doherty. I'm the Assistant Director of Corporate Education and Partnerships, also Corporate Engagement. This meeting will be recorded. Closed captioning is available. You can go ahead and use the chat window for any discussion or comments during the presentation. And if you put your cursor over either the top or bottom of your Zoom screen, you'll see what looks like a little chat bubble and it says chat underneath. You can just click on that icon and type in there. Also, if you have any questions for our Q&A portion of this discussion, please go ahead and also use the Q&A to submit those questions to the speakers. But if you add your questions to the chat window, we'll make sure you get that as well. So we're going to go ahead and start with a poll. So I'm going to launch our first poll. And so I'll allow everyone a chance to go ahead and answer the first question. Are you currently working in private security? I'll give just a couple more seconds before we end our poll. Give a couple more. All right, I'm going to do the countdown now. 10, 9, 8, 5. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll right now. And sharing results, we have 50% are currently working in the private security profession, either part-time or full-time. I am going to do another poll. Our next question, why are you interested in these courses in this program? To strengthen the resume, obtain clients, improve self-awareness, train coworkers, all of the above, other. So I'll give you another about 20 to 30 seconds to answer this question. All right, I'm going to give another 10 seconds. All right, and last chance. Okay, I'm going to end the poll now, share the results. So 75% of you are interested in strengthening resume, 25% obtaining clients, 50% improving self-awareness, 25% training coworkers, and 75% others. So we will get into our presentation now. Okay, so Tanya, if you can take us to the next slide, we're going to introduce our course director today, Rob Savage. Rob is a native of Herndon, Virginia, has been the CEO of a private security company in Beverly Hills, California, since his retirement from the U.S. Secret Service in April 2018. Rob, I'm going to hand it over to you to give an introduction about yourself, and then we're going to go into the next slide and introduce the rest of our instructors and speakers today. So Rob, take it away.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to our team. Thank you for expressing an interest in learning about executive protection. You know, after having served a career in the Secret Service and then moving to the private sector, I really saw just a multitude of disciplines of folks that were out there in the private sector who were working in private security and specifically in executive protection. I saw them that had prior law enforcement experience, some who were security guards, some who were from the military, some who, had just taken other courses, right? And so when we would work in common details, I would see that there were really a lot of different perspectives and given my background from the Secret Service, I saw, wow, here's an opportunity to give back, right? In this area, in my previous role with the Secret Service would offer training to state and local police departments. And they maybe once or twice a year, an opportunity would come up to go back to Washington, DC and participate in a seminar. But really the masses, many police departments didn't get that opportunity. So that was one area that I thought, if I could get together a coalition of retired Secret Service agents who had the same passion of wanting to, share their experiences. And, many of our experiences that were in the Secret Service, all of us have worked in the private sector. And so we've seen the transition that we had to make going from our experiences in the Secret Service to the private sector and how that's different. And using concepts that really, when you're in the executive protection role, a lot of times folks will refer to, you as a bodyguard, and a bodyguard mentality will not really prove effective. It's more of a reactionary posture. And so our goal is to bring proactive concepts here and go through these concepts of if you were working in a team, how would you prioritize where to focus your actions, and then hone it down to if you're working in a smaller team or even working by yourself. And so in this course, this is the first time that we were able to partner with a major university to give some credibility to the instructors and to the program that's behind it, rather than just a Rob and Bill school that's being taught out there. And for you to have the opportunity to progress through a beginner's course. And, our concept is going from a crawl, walk, and run through a beginner's, intermediate, and advanced course here. And we believe that once you go through this course, that you'll have the experience and the practical exercise and the opportunity to go back into your field if you're in the private security, or just go back and help improve your own self-awareness. And then when you come back for the subsequent courses, you can apply those lessons and continue on. That once you were to successfully complete all 3 courses, that you would be able to go out there in the executive protection world and feel confident that even if you didn't work in law enforcement, or you didn't work, trained by an effective executive protection specialist, that you will have the skill set to be successful out there. And, I would ask many times when I was out there working in the private sector, when someone would self-proclaim themselves as an executive protection expert, and I would ask, where's your background? Where did you learn that? Sometimes people may take that challenging, but You know, the reality is that there are a lot of folks that are labeling themselves as experts that don't have that background. And so this will give you the credibility to show, yes, I was trained by agents who protected the President of the United States, who actually taught at the Secret Service Training Academy, who conducted advances domestically and internationally, and were involved in the planning of national special security events. So whether it's small estate details or you're doing event planning, this is the goal in this course. So I'm lucky that some of my colleagues that I have developed relationships with over my last 25 years in the Secret Service have joined and are excited to be a part of this. Julio Barrera, Rich Podkowski, and Bill Cameron are with us here today. We also have a fourth instructor, Jason Warren, who wasn't able to join today, but will be able to participate in the future. So I'd like to turn it over to each of them to give you a little bit of their background and let you hear from them, their passions about what they want to do.
That's
Julio?
perfect. Thank you, Rob. Yep. Julio, do you want to get us started?
Yes, good morning, everyone, and happy to be here with UCI, with my colleagues, Rob, Bill, and Rich, and all of you joining us today. You know, it's incredible. Rob mentioned the 25 years. It's incredible how just time goes by, because, you know, I remember Rob and myself and Rich and Bill. I mean, we're all, you know, much older now when we first started, and executive protection and in the world of Secret Service definitely has taken us all over the world, and a lot of experiences, and too many to even start here in this forum, but definitely in the classroom, I'm sure we will fill you up with different scenarios, life scenarios that we've encountered that have affected us personally, professionally. We always say that we're in the shadow of history. We're always in the backdrop of history, whether that be a major summit meeting where foreign world leaders attend, or historical events. So all of us were in the service of 9/11. We all have our own stories. We all were there prior to 9/11, during and after. So we saw that transition of the state of our country during that era. And we can certainly relate to that and explain how that was later. But for me, my career was incredible. I started off as a police officer here in LA and went on to the Secret Service, where many of you may not know. Many of you know us as, you know, being with the president, being with executive protection, with world leaders, but we're investigators as well. So I started my career here in the LA office in downtown as an investigator, doing a lot of undercover work. Many people don't know that. Then we can explain that further, but that was my career. I loved it. Then I started going overseas, doing investigations primarily. Some protection, because as you will find out, it's a tiered level protection management type of career that we're given. We do well in one aspect of protection, then we move on to the next level and so forth, until they deem us ready to be at the president's level. So for me, my career was 23 years, and it was very rewarding, and I'll be happy to share any tidbits I can to anybody that's interested. And I definitely enjoy teaching. The last part of my career was in training, so I definitely enjoyed training and teaching about some of the knowledge that I've accrued through the years. And I look forward to meeting you all in the future in a classroom setting. Thank you so much.
Go ahead, Pod.
Well, good morning, everybody. And Julio stole all my thunder, so I just want to mirror everything he said. And starting off with, I'm very excited to be part of this new curriculum at UCI and to be part of the team. As Julio said, we all worked together in the past. Julio and I worked together in the Los Angeles field office, and we've also worked details, outside across the country. Bill Cameron and I were on the presidential detail together back in the 90s. And Rob and I, we first met in Washington, D.C. I have a couple of years on Rob, so met him early in his career, and really appreciate the opportunity to be part of this team. My career in the Secret Service, I retired as a squad supervisor of a task force in Chicago. My stops were Chicago, Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, and then retired out of Chicago several years ago. In the private sector, I was with a major Fortune 100 corporation in their global security group for a period of 10 years. And then after that, I've been a security consultant probably for the last 12 years, working with corporations, different institutions, what we call high net worth clients and family offices, and gained additional experience in the private sector, which transitioned me from all of the law enforcement assets that we had available to us and resources to the challenges in the private sector. And I will say that I've had rewarding opportunities where I've been able to add to my skills and experience. I think, as Julio said, we were given unique responsibilities in our law enforcement careers, and also probably very unique opportunities in the private sector as well. So I personally am looking forward to working with all the prospective students in our courses, and to share my skills and experience, and hopefully have a positive impact on the program. Thank you.
Last but not least, Bill.
Well, thank you. And I'll say actually good afternoon rather than good morning, since I'm on an East Coast guy here. So, but I want to welcome everybody. This is a great opportunity and a very exciting venture. And I think you being a part of it and hearing from you, getting the questions from you, will help all of us as instructors going forward. But just real quick on my career, I started in the Secret Service as a uniform division officer. I moved over after 18 months, I moved over to the special agent branch. Was in the Boston field office, did my time there, and then moved down to Washington, D.C. on the Presidential Protective Division. Was lucky enough to serve under both President Bush and President Clinton, the 5 years there. And then I moved and I was a training instructor at the academy for about 4 years, okay, and relocated back to the Boston field office after Providence. And I ran a financial crime task force while I was there, which I enjoyed very much. The interaction between state, local, and federal officials. It was a great opportunity to take part in that. Okay, from there, actually right after 9/11, I retired from the Secret Service and went to work for Reebok Corporation. Worked there for 4 or 5 years. Moved on to another international corporation. So I spent about 7 years in the private sector, and then I just felt that the Secret Service missed me so much. So I ended up coming back to the Secret Service in 2010 as the emergency management coordinator, and spent an additional 10 years there. And that was very enjoyable. And one of the real things I enjoyed about coming back was seeing how much the Secret Service had evolved and improved, and all of the different things. And that's one of the things we'll emphasize in this class is, if you don't stay in front of the curve, whether you're in the private sector or whether you're in the government, okay, you're going to be lost. And you got to stay abreast of everything going on. And, you know, some of the things hopefully you'll learn in this course will show you how the Secret Service has evolved and how much all of us took what we learned in the Secret Service and applied it to the private sector. So I'm excited to meet a lot of you in July when we have the course, but also looking forward to learning a lot from you. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you, Bill. What an incredible lineup and wealth of experience and breadth of experience that we have on this discussion today. Tanya, if you want to go to the next slide, and we're going to pass it back to Rob to take us through the next few slides before we get into our Q&A.
Ready? You ready for me, Lindsay?
I'm ready.
So as I mentioned a little bit when we started, we're going to have 3 different courses: a beginner, intermediate, and advanced. And this will give you the opportunity to go from learning just the concepts and the methodologies that come with protection, you know, pre-deployment of assets, preparation, being proactive, going through contingencies. These are the things that make the difference between an effective executive protection operation and one in which you just are reactive, meaning that there was no pre-planning, that you were just along with your protectee and you were trying to figure it out as you go. And many times when you see even, let's take here in the Los Angeles area in the entertainment industry, this is a very rich environment and community for executive protection. That there are many that are out there that that don't have knowledge in this area of the pre-planning and the contingency planning. And so this is what we will take you through. And the benefit of having all of the instructors is that during each day of our beginning classes, we will have multiple instructors present, so that there will be a instructional block, and then there'll be a practical exercise block, where then we'll break up into small groups and we'll actually practice the concepts that we're developing in the class. And you'll get to have that one-on-one interactions with either Rich, Bill, Julio, Jason, or myself as we go through these different topics. But our goal is to, over that first 5 days, is to give you a solid foundation to start with, from dealing with some of the state and federal laws, dealing with use of force and the business liability. I saw a question in the Q&A that one of the questions was asking, how was that transition from the Secret Service to the private sector? And I would say the main one is that, one, protectees of the Secret Service are mandated by law, right? And the Secret Service will make those assignments based on agents that they feel, are best suited for the detail. But ultimately, you're there, and the protectee is receiving protection because of their status. Either they're seeking public office, or they're an immediate family member of a public office holder who qualifies for Secret Service protection. But when you go in the private sector, the client is the person who's hiring you. So you haven't been selected to go with them. They basically selected you. And so there will be times that when you're in the Secret Service, that there were a lot of other support personnel, staff members that maybe did other tasks that a Secret Service agent, would not normally do, so that you were 100% of the time focused on the security function. In the private sector, you may be asked to grab some bags, right? You may be asked to do some personal tasks that you otherwise wouldn't do in the Secret Service. And that's a balancing act, because if you were to take the posture of, I'm only here for security and I don't do those things, well, your client relationship could come to a quick end. So that's a balance that you have to develop. And when you speak from a position of credibility, I have found that over time, and especially when starting that relationship, that if you can explain, when you're by yourself versus when you're working with an advanced person, or when you have a driver along with you, that you'll be in a different position to be able to help out. And if you're knowledgeable on those differences, and that's what we plan to teach you in this course, then you have a better chance of briefing your client ahead of time and getting ahead of some of these misconceptions that, they may not realize, hey, if I ask you to go run an errand for me, right, and leave me alone, I've actually exposed myself, right? So that those give you opportunities for you to be creative and maybe ask the client, okay, well, once we get you in a secure location, maybe then can we, run that errand? But that becomes, really your customer service and soft skills that are equally important, because probably 99.9% of your interactions in the private sector are going to involve those soft skills. And that's where I think you would hear Rich and Bill and Julio, we would all share that when we came from the Secret Service into the private sector, that we had to take time to pick up on those differences and adjust accordingly. Because if we didn't, you're not going to be successful in the private sector.
Would anyone else like to comment on that as well? Anyone from our instructor panel here?
Yes, I can. Oh, go ahead, Rich.
No, Julio, go ahead. You first.
No, definitely that transition from the world of the Secret Service to the private sector is quite a change. The obvious is, obviously, we are a law enforcement entity where we have a mission. We have federal laws that back us up, that enforce our mission, that we rely upon. And that's domestically in any U.S. territory also. The unique thing about us, even though we may be Secret Service agents active, and I think this is kind of where we hone our style and our ability to relate to people from different walks of life or different sectors, is the fact that when we go internationally as Secret Service agents, let's say, many people don't realize this, but when we go internationally, we don't have the authority necessarily overseas to enforce anything. So we rely obviously on our reputation and the fact of who we are and who we are representing. Let's say in this case, the President of the United States and the White House. When we go overseas, it's all about relationships. It's all about building that relationship with the foreign entity that we're dealing with, whether it be military, police, governmental, and still doing our job, and still being able to give the same 360 degrees protection that we require everywhere in a foreign country. Now, that foreign country could be an amicable country. It could be sometimes an adversarial country. And they're different. We all have different experiences overseas. So I think that education that we got in doing overseas assignments definitely, for me, helped me in dealing with now in the private sector. When I went to work in the corporate world, I went to NBC Universal as security manager right after I retired. And after that, I became more of a freelance executive protection guy who I would a case-by-case basis, pick a client to do executive protection, whether it be overseas or here. But I think people skills is crucial. Being able to relate to other people and talk at their level, not necessarily talk the lingo talk of our talk, executive protection, talking above their heads. Being able to kind of talk in their terms as far as what we're looking to do, what services we're looking to offer, what do we expect back from the client, and for what reason, explain it carefully. So I think you need to have definitely develop those people skills, because yeah, in private sector, it's all about what the client wants, how much the client is willing to spend also, versus Secret Service. We have the model, we can bring in assets, resources from everywhere, from the military side, from governmental side, other agencies, local police, but it's a whole different ballgame when it comes to private sector, which is much smaller. We still cover the same principles in our head, 360, but we do more with less. We have that saying, but that's from my perspective. Rich?
Well, yes. So as far as transitioning from the Secret Service to the private sector, as my colleague said, I think the biggest thing is you're giving up your law enforcement authority, and also working with other law enforcement agencies that supported our mission. We were mission oriented both in our protective responsibilities and also in investigations. I went right from my law enforcement career to a Fortune 100 company, which was starting up, basically revamping what was their, I'll call it basic security package, to more enhanced methodologies and resources. And you may encounter resistance in the private sector, and you'll be faced with really managing expectations, for clients. In the private sector, you may be doing personal protection for an individual or a group or a family, or you may be tasked with event security, for an institution or a corporation or, a special event. So really what not that you don't need good communication skills in law enforcement, obviously you do, but your communication skills in the private sector, I think, are paramount, because they do help you manage expectations and work with what we used to call the host committee or staff, that help to put the event or, put the environment together, for individual protectees. So those soft skills that Rob mentioned and Julio mentioned, to hone your own skill set. I think really what it kind of boils down to is you got to look inside and look at your critical thinking skills, what type of leadership and liaison skills that you have, and then decision making, because oftentimes you're going to be going into an unscripted scenario where you're going to encounter things that you're going to have to think on your feet and hopefully make the right decision. You'll be working with less assets, less support personnel and resources. So that's where those skills that I just described really come into play. I think you hit, not that we didn't have a plan, we had very definite plans that we had to follow and put together in our protective responsibilities and investigative. But I'll throw this term out right now, and that's situational awareness. And that's, knowing your environment inside and out, and what you're going to potentially encounter or what you're potentially going to be responsible for. So really, going into the private sector, it is a transition from being in a law enforcement capacity. And, as Rob mentioned, hopefully this course or these courses will give you a good solid foundation and the building blocks that you'll need to be successful, in your security endeavors. Next, Bill.
Yeah, I don't, I agree with all these points and everything that they've said is exactly what that transition from, the Secret Service or the government to the private sector. I think you can sum it up. It's mission versus ROI. Okay. And that return on investment is what the private sector looks for. So when you're selling your program, okay, you have to explain as to if that company is going to invest money, what are they going to get out of it? That is not necessarily the way it was in the Secret Service. So that's what you have to understand, is that they're always looking for a return on their investment, and scale is another one. Okay. You have to be able to say, listen, I'll do as much or as little as you want. Okay. And you have to work with that company and all the different entities that are involved in that company if you want to be successful trying to get some type of program in there. Okay. And that's, I think, would kind of sum it up. And if I would give it words of what it would be careful of too much. Okay. I got from when I first went to Reebok, listen, this is not the White House. So, and that's sometimes the Secret Service thing is a little overwhelming for people, and they don't want, for you to come in and try to make this, corporate headquarters or whatever, the White House. And that's what you have to try to avoid, those type of things.
Right. And I'll just jump back in. Bill, you said it exactly right. We encountered that in the program we were trying to build out with a major corporation. They recognize the need for, executive protection security, but to mirror what you said, this isn't the White House. So you have to be adaptable. You have to assess, what the potential threats are, what you're looking to mitigate in terms of risk. And again, that's where your personal skills, are going to come to the forefront, and how you manage those expectations for performance, for return on investment. And even though it's a challenge, it can be very, very rewarding to be able to initiate something that, then becomes policy and procedure and protocol.
Thank you. Let's go to our next question. I think a lot of the listeners are going to be really interested in this one. What are some of the basic executive protection principles in the private sector, and what would a typical day look like in this role? Who wants to tackle that one first?
Sure, I'll jump out there. Yeah. So it will depend on whether or not your client subscribes to 24/7, right, security, or if your client just wants a door-to-door type security where they feel, when I move and I go to work, I want you to travel with me. The difference, I would say, really in the private sector versus a Secret Service is that the client is really driving the coverage and when it happens. So I've had clients where their concern is more with their children and more with their family, right? And so when they decide to divide their resources, that they may say, I want you to stay with at the house, at our estate, and cover our children. And I'm okay with, taking a car service, or even sometimes driving myself to the office, right? And so you're going to have to be adaptive to that and go where the client is giving those directions. So many times, and I would say for the private security companies I've led, that I would say your day would start, with your own transportation provided from your house to the work site, whether that's starting at the corporate headquarters, right? Some clients say, I only want the executive protection while I'm at work. So you meet them when they come to work. And that could be because they feel, look, I don't have much attention when I'm in my private life. It's when I show up to work that then I feel this is where people, look for me and know where I am. And so as you build your own credibility, you'll be able to offer advice, to the client on whether or not, you could be better served if you met them, at their home and then traveled with them. So a typical day would depend on if it was 24/7, you're going to come in and the off shift that you're relieving, you would get a briefing from them and they would tell you, this is what happened throughout the last shift. And normally a detail would have like a pass down log of any incidents, of any unusual circumstances, or even just some instructions from the client on, expected guests or expected deliveries. If you're dealing with someone who's a celebrity or very well-known public figure, they may use aliases, right? And so you may have to deal with that of when packages come, to know which packages are for the client versus which packages are for the business or for other folks. When it comes down to dress, right? There's these old stereotypes of the Secret Service, right? That, hey, these guys only wear suits and, they're wearing, if you go back to the 40s and 50s, wearing a fedora, right? And very, there could be a stereotype of being very rigid. But the reality is that security should blend into the background, right? And many times where you're not the sore thumb, you should not be taking the attention away. And when you're even working by yourself, you want to be less of a visible person because you're by yourself, right? So where you can blend in, and we'll talk about these different concepts of when you should be close to your client and when you should be able to give your client distance. And those all come with different scenarios and different circumstances. But typically, drive to the workplace. If you were working at my company, the goal would be that you would not use your personal vehicle, right, for any executive protection work. And I would typically say to the client, either our team can drive your car, or we provide a vehicle service so that you're using a company car or the client's car. As well as, when we get down to equipment, right, and telephones, that if you should be using the client's phone service, and it also helps with the client of feeling that their information is protected, right? So if they have a phone list and all of that information is either on an iPad or a phone list, and then just staying in tune and you have to have a good open communication with your client, or if they have a personal aide, so you have an idea of what the schedule is for the day, so that you're able to plan out your day, right? No one is going to be there necessarily thinking about when are you going to eat? When are you going to take the time to do the basic necessities of using the restroom? Does the car, right, the vehicle that you're transporting the client in, how is it on gas, right? So these are different things that you have to plan and figure out throughout the day. When is the best time, to do that, right? You may have a movement with your client that they're going to a secure building, and that they're going to be there for a couple of hours. That's where you have a communication with your client, and you say, okay, while you're here, and maybe that building has security, but they're behind locked doors, and you're going to have to just assess when are the times that you may separate from your client versus other times where it's not ideal to separate. So maybe you take that opportunity to get a quick bite to eat, to use the restroom, to go and get gas in the car, right? But all of those times, you're going to have to measure when is the best time to do it. You have to do it. Now, granted, if you had a support, if you had staff, you could have some of those duties handled by someone else, but many times you may be there to handle them all yourself. And it takes coordination. And that's when you have the background that we want to give you from this course, then you can speak with authority. You can speak with experience and share this with your client if they're not aware, so that there's an understanding there. Because if you don't mention those things and you just take it upon yourself that you're going to just go and get the car gassed up, or you're going to go get a bite to eat, and your client comes out and they're ready to go, they're now wondering where you are, right? And so depending on, what their schedule and itinerary is, there's a term that we always use in protection, and that's hurry up and wait, right? There's a lot of hurry up and wait time that you have to be prepared all the time, and you can't let idle time go unused. So when you find yourself with idle time, you need to be thinking about the contingencies and the other planning and what am I going to do if this happens or that happens? And these are things that we'll go over in the course, so that you're making good use of that, so that when something happens, you're not then trying to figure it out. That whatever environment that you've gone to, even if you didn't have the opportunity to do a lot of preparations ahead of time, that you're taking advantage of that downtime now to get caught up and get prepared for all the different scenarios that could happen. Bad things that happen are not always someone trying to physically harm your client, by means of an assault, right? You've got to be thinking through different things of, what about an earthquake, right? What about a power failure, right? What about crime that happens incidental and they have no idea who your client is, but you just find yourself in the middle of an active shooter situation or an armed robbery, right? So these are the things that for you to be effective, you have to always be thinking, always. If you find yourself just idle and you're thinking, I'm bored, then you're not utilizing your mind appropriately to be prepared when something happens. Because a split second between you making the right decision and you freezing and thinking, well, what do I do now, could be the difference between you getting your client out of an unsafe situation or a bad circumstances happening.
Thank you. And also, Missy gave us a friendly reminder. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A window or the chat. Would anyone like to weigh in on a day in the life?
I'll just add to what, this is Rich, I'll just add to what Rob said. I think, the daily life and private security, depending on what you're doing, if you're in a corporate environment, it's probably a little more structured. If you're working with a celebrity, there might be, some surprises in your daily schedule. If you're with the family office, same situation. If you're doing event security, it's most probably pretty predictable as to what you're going to do, but obviously you have to be adaptable as well. I think one of the big things that people in the private sector need to think about is professional decorum, and appearance is important. How you dress, how you carry yourself, et cetera, et cetera. But I think to maintain professional decorum, you have to remember what your roles and responsibilities are. It's inevitable that you're going to develop personal relationships, either, especially in personal protection. But you have to really make sure that you're staying within the lines of what's professional and not getting too personal with your protectee. But it is a balance, because you do have to talk to family members, you do have to talk to the principal. So you really have to be cognizant of your communication skills and what you're actually trying to convey, and make appropriate comments where and when appropriate. Getting back to a daily schedule, hopefully there's going to be predictability in what you're doing on a daily basis. Although all of us that are former Secret Service agents know that we'd run into what we call off the record movements or off the record events. And specifically, let's say, you're going to an evening event, with your principal. And then after the event, the expectation is you're going back to the house or, wherever you're going to go. And then somebody says, well, no, I want to go to this restaurant. We're going to meet with 15 of my friends. So you got to shift gears pretty quick and start thinking about, in an advanced capacity, how are you going to handle, what are you going to encounter? What are you going to have to do? What are the contingencies? So it kind of boils down to, having a plan. These are some of the bigger concepts, I think, that you're going to have to think about on a daily basis. So that's my input to that question.
Thank you. And Rich, you had mentioned the term family office. There's a question. Can you explain what that is?
So a family office would be, let's say it could be a celebrity, or it could be, a person of, a wealthy family, for lack of a better term, who has an extended family or has, multiple properties, whether they're corporate or personal. So oftentimes you'll have people in those situations, refer to themselves as a family office, and you'll have, more responsibilities than just, taking care of one person or one type of environment. That's probably the best way I could put it.
Thank you. A couple more questions. Thinking about recent events and targeted violence, how would this course help me prepare?
I'll jump in there. Actually, Julio and I did some targeted violence training in the corporate world in the last couple of years, and I think the thing with targeted violence, unfortunately, it's almost occurring on almost a daily basis, and just the recent activities in the last month or last several weeks just dictate the fact that there really is no predictability anymore as to where, when, or why something happens. Whether it's an educational institution, whether it's a religious facility, whether it's, a shopping mall or a grocery store, or even, random violence on the street or at an event like the concert in Las Vegas. I mean, we could enumerate several of these, but I think the really, really scary thing right now is the unpredictability of these events happening. And I think one of the biggest resources out there to the general public now follow the Department of Homeland Security guidelines, which we've all probably heard about: run, hide, fight, and having a plan based on the incident that you encounter. And I think that's 24/7 awareness now and 24/7 responsibility. And I defer to my colleagues for additional comments.
Yeah, I think the knowledge of protective concepts can be applied in so many different ways. Whether you're talking about executive protection, whether you're talking about any type of security, it's the concepts that you can use, and the situational awareness that Rich brought up before. When I left the Secret Service as an agent and it was right after 9/11. Okay. And what happened was businesses wanted security because everybody was scared. Okay. We're a very reactive society. Okay. Instead of being proactive or reactive, something happens and then they realize, whether it be a school or business or whatever, that, okay, now we have to do something about this. Okay. And what you try to emphasize when you go to a corporation is you gotta, and also the difference between a soft and a hard target. Okay. And schools, soft target, very little security. That's one of the big reasons why they get hit so much. Okay. It's a soft target. And as we all know, the bad guys want to succeed, so they go for soft targets. Okay. So I think what you have to use is, you have to kind of almost go in the bad guy's mentality and figure, okay, what is it going to take to time and distance? Okay, if you have a little more of that, I've done school security surveys, and a lot of it just has to do with awareness. Okay, and I think that with the events that have happened over the last month or so, you're going to see a lot of this, but you have to maintain it. You can't be reactive to a situation. You got to be proactive and get out in front of it.
Thank you. I think there's a theme, being proactive and situational awareness here. We have one more question, and then we're going to wrap up with some final thoughts. So you mentioned this earlier, but are there any key characteristics that an individual should have to be successful at executive protection? And if you all want to just pick one before we wrap up.
I'll start again. I think critical thinking skills and decision-making skills are paramount due to the fact that even the best laid plans and expectations can go awry, and you really have to rely on your instincts and the things that that you can do successfully to either put you in a safe situation or get you out of a bad situation. So, those are some of the internal things that a security professional should bring to the table, because you're going to be relied upon. That's your role. That's your job and responsibility to keep people safe and secure, or a venue. Those are my thoughts.
Thank you. I think that's a great one to end on. I know we have one more minute, but Tanya, if you want to please share our slides again so we can do our wrap up. If any of you would like to talk about what it is that we haven't talked about, what would you like the audience to know before we wrap up, and then tell them how to enroll in your course? Is there anything that we haven't covered yet? Here's a little bit of information about who should enroll in the course. Obviously, this is just a small list, and it is relevant to many different people and professionals. And if you want any additional information, in the next slide, I'm going to show you who to contact to get, yeah, we can go to the next, perfect. So a little bit about our upcoming courses. The first course begins on July 25th through 29th, 8 to 5 on UCI's campus. You can register and find out more information about the course schedule on our website, ce.uci.edu/exec protection. And if you go to the next slide, Tanya, Missy Pittman, who has been behind the scenes today, there she is. You can contact her for more information, and she can get you in touch with Rob, our course director, or any of our instructors. And I just want to thank everybody. You are all amazing. I want to thank Tanya for running the slides today, Missy for running all the questions, and for all of you for participating and sharing your wealth of knowledge with us. So if you want to have any final thoughts before we say goodbye, feel free to now.
Yeah, I'll just jump in real quick and just say that, look, this is an opportunity that you look across the country that really is only here at UCI. And you have an opportunity to come in and be a part of this program. And we've got big dreams, even beyond these initial courses that we're looking to do. And they will involve advanced driving, as well as some tactical shooting. But all of these courses will come, subsequent to learning these initial concepts. So I look forward to seeing enrollments. We're, exploring the opportunities. I know that, when you look at tuition, that it's not just an easy thing to dig in your pocket, right, and pay for. So Missy will be able to share some financing opportunities if it's a question that you may have. Once we're able to move the course along, we'll be exploring opportunities where the GI Bill, right, can be used. And we're going through steps with the California Post or police officers standards of testing to get the course approved, so that it'll make it easier for those that are current law enforcement officers to receive reimbursement for travel to take the course. So
awesome. And on that note, Missy provided a website in the chat. It's ce.uci.edu/resources/financial. So for any information about financial assistance, you can go there. Anything to add, Missy? All right. You can reach out to her. Her email is missy.pittman@uci.edu. Thank you all so much for joining us today.
Thank
And
you.
the recording will be sent out to all of those who registered. So you'll see that in your email. Yes, thank you. AJ, yes, we're going to send you all of this information in a follow-up email.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks all. Take care.
Be safe, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.